Good morning. So, soon after his enlightenment, Siddhartha went for a walk. And a stranger passed him on the path and noticed immediately he was radiating with this immense light. And he had this really peaceful countenance. And the stranger asked him, "My friend, what are you, a god?" And the Buddha replied, "No." And he said, "Well, maybe a magician or a wizard you must be." And again, he replied, "No." And then he said, "Well, are you a man?" And the Buddha replied again, "No." And he finally said, "Well then, my friend, what are you?" And the Buddha said, "I am awake." The title of Buddha literally translates to one who is awake. So, awake to what? And if you're awake, that means you've been asleep for a time. Are we all asleep? So a few weeks ago, I shared the sort of story of the sleep of Adam, that metaphorical biblical story where God puts Adam into a deep sleep so he can take a rib in which to create Eve. Yeah. But nowhere in the Bible does it say he woke up. So, right? So New Thought folks interpret that as we have been asleep, humanity has been asleep and dreaming this whole time. What?
Except Eve, maybe.
Right. She was the only one awake. That's good. I love that. So, stories abound in mythology and fables and ancient wisdom texts and, other traditions of a person or a god that has fallen into a deep sleep or fallen into some sort of a spell. And after some time, woken up to a superpower or their spiritual self or the next life. So in Greek mythology, souls drink from the river Lethe, which is also called the river of forgetfulness, so that they might forget their earthly existence before the reincarnation. So putting to sleep their memory so that that does not influence the next life. So a lot of these stories can also reflect the change of the seasons, the apparent death of winter that transitions into the rebirth of spring, which can also be reflected in the Easter story as we are entering the Easter season officially, right? The death of the human-only self and the resurrection of the eternal divine self. So the book that does anybody have a copy? I keep forgetting to bring it up here. Birthing a Greater Reality, which is the book that is the inspiration for our talk series. And we're looking at chapter 5. Yeah, Tana's holding it up out there. That's our book. So the author, Robert Brummett, talks all about waking up. Thank you, Chris. Now, officially, we have it here. How many people have a copy of this? Yeah, a lot. And are in a book study. So he talks a lot about chapter 5, this idea of waking up to our spiritual self. And the idea that we have been asleep and dreaming this dream of separation. We have been asleep and dreaming the dream of separation. He also brings in Eastern thought in this, which I appreciate. And he talks about how in Buddhism that this idea they use the term Maya, the trance of Maya, which is the veil or the illusion of duality, the illusion of separation. And literally translated, Maya means not that, which is an interesting way to see it. Being asleep is not that. And so the Upanishads state that in whom reside all beings and who resides in all beings, who is the giver of grace to all, the supreme soul of the universe, the limitless being. I am that. So being aware of this profound truth is being awake. And not being aware is being stuck in not that, in Maya, right? And so Brahmet in this chapter talks about how when we're asleep, when we're caught in that dream of Maya, that we tend to look outside of ourselves. We look to the illusion to bring us what we think we want, what will satisfy us. But it can't, because everything in this human-only dimension is temporary. It's also based on the old belief of separation, that we're separate from our source, we're separate from each other, we're separate from our good. We also tend to get attached to those things, right, in the human temporary realm. And it is when we get attached, the Buddha says, that we suffer. So some interpret the Buddha's saying of desire as desire is the source of suffering, is the cause of suffering. But if you really look at the word, the Pali word, which is tanha, that really interprets more correctly into attachment or craving. So it's the attachment and the craving that are causing suffering. So how does this idea square with New Thought, right? And so Brahmet talks about this in this chapter, kind of contrasts this idea, and he brings in, he references Emily Cady, who many of us know in Unity know was a spiritual leader and teacher of the Fillmores, big influence in the Fillmores. The Fillmores actually published her book, Lessons in Truth, where she says, desires of the heart are always God tapping us on our consciousness. Tap, 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 here. And you notice she qualifies desires of the heart rather than just desire. The desires of the heart. So, if it's a desire of the heart, then it's the universe tapping you, letting you know that what it is that you truly desire is already yours. That the quality, it's the quality behind what it is you desire that's already yours. So the quality of love, of peace, of joy, of fulfillment, of well-being, of wisdom, of strength, those are divine qualities. And you, being created in the image and likeness, are an expression of that. Therefore, it must also be yours. Those qualities are already yours, inherent in you already. Now, we know that desire can get distorted, right? We know this. So, Brahmet addresses that, and he says, desire may be likened to pure water from a mountain stream that flows for many miles and gradually becomes polluted with sewage and toxins before it reaches the sea. Desire in the wellspring of the heart is pure, creative, and powerful. But filtered through the shadowy unconscious, it can be polluted with greed and lust and hatred before it surfaces. Which is why we did the work of healing the shadowy unconscious last week. That's why that came before this week. We did the work of healing and integrating the shadow self and those unconscious things in our unconscious. So, but we want to be aware of where the desire is coming from. Is it a desire of my heart, or is it a desire of the ego? Is it coming from, an awakened state, or is it coming from the sleep of Maya? So we want to be able to discern that. If it's pure, in other words, and it's in alignment with the divine qualities that are already yours. So let me give you an example. So if it's healing that you desire, physical healing, the divine quality of that is wholeness, well-being, vibrant life, energy. So that's already yours, right? That's the divine quality inherent in you. Another example might be you desire to be well paid for work that you love doing, right? The divine quality of that is fulfillment, joy, abundance. So that is a divine quality. So yes, it's the universe going, hey, this is yours already. Let it in. Align yourself with, accept this. It's yours already. So when we accept it and embrace it, it just naturally unfolds in our experience. And we're led to whatever we need to do to help facilitate that. But here's the thing. We need to make sure that we're not being attached to the form, which is the tricky part, right? Experiencing it, enjoying it, but not being attached to the form. So ultimately, that evolutionary impulse within us, that ultimately is the true desire. That evolutionary impulse within us, that radial energy that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, that energy of love is drawing us ever upward. Right? Drawing us ever upward. Thank God. But in the meantime, we identify with the current level of consciousness that we're inhabiting. And for most people, that level of consciousness is separation consciousness. Right? Now, for those of us here, I would like to think, those of us on a spiritual path, we are in process of awakening. Right? We are in process of awakening. I'm looking at these faces here. I'm seeing, yes, we're all in a process of awakening. And it is a process, So until we fully awaken, we have one foot stuck in Maya. Where that one stuck. Where there is also the experience of pain. There's an experience of pleasure, but also the experience of pain. Right? Now, the Buddha says that pain and pleasure arise from our physical body, and happiness and suffering arise from the mind. So you think about happiness and suffering, they're really not caused by outward conditions. They're caused by how we react, how we respond to what happens to us, right? So, when we look outside of ourselves for happiness, or we believe that suffering is imposed upon us from outside of us, we're we're stuck, right? We're stuck in the illusion. You know, we also look outside of us for relief from that suffering. Now, some say that pain is inevitable and suffering is a choice. And I have to tell you, I have struggled with that for years. Sometimes I think, yeah, that's right. And other times I think, you know, one look at the Palestinians in Gaza, or the Israelis that are still held captive, you know, that's suffering. They didn't choose that, right? Especially the children didn't choose that. So I think we can't let that belief dismiss our compassion or stop us from taking action to help. But we can look inside of ourselves. We can look at our own life and see where there might be the experience of suffering, whether that's physical or emotional, right? And see, maybe if we look a little deeper, we can notice that, yeah, there was pain, but the suffering was a judgment about it. Can you think back into an experience that you may have had? The pain was real, right? But the suffering, maybe it was a judgment about it. And it's our judgments, our perceptions that create our experience in life, literally. You've probably heard of the saying, we don't see what is, we see what we are, right? We're not really seeing what is, we're seeing who we are, what we are. So if we're centered in love, we'll see plenty of things that are loving. But if we're coming from a place of fear, we'll see a lot to be frightened of. Right? So, it is our judgments, our perceptions. We're also very often projecting our past onto our present moment. Or sometimes our future, a future fantasy, into the present moment. So I recently saw a comedian do a whole bit about this. And she admitted that she was projecting future fantasies into her present moment when she was going on the first date with a guy. She was like, you know, just met this person. They're going on a date. They're going to dinner. And she's thinking to herself, I wonder if we'll kiss tonight, right? Which quickly escalated to, I wonder if we'll get intimate. Which quickly escalated to, I wonder if he's the one, the hero that will rescue me from my miserable life. Right? And then she's planning the wedding, right? Wondering how many kids they're going to have, what those kids are going to look like. The whole thing on the first date. Hey, at least she's aware of it, though, right? And that's the first step. Always. So we don't see things as they are. We see them as we are. Our perceptions create our experience of most things. And that's actually even true physically. You know, our perceptions of the color of things, that's not actually in the object itself. It's the anatomy of our eye. Other creatures see that differently. Like dogs, they say, only see shades of gray and brown and maybe a little bit of blue. They won't see this, yellow, because they only have 2 receptors in their eyes, where we have 3. And then there is a special fish. Has anybody heard of this special fish? It's a type of shrimp, a mantis shrimp, that has this wide spectrum of vision because it has 12 receptors in its eyes, in its little eyes, where we have 3. Can you imagine, like, what is it seeing? I want to see those colors. God, I'm jealous. Come on. Also, perception of color varies between humans. I can't tell you how many times my husband and I have disagreed over green, blue, or gray. It's green, damn it. No, it's blue. Ah. It's always. So, all that is to say, our individual perception colors our experience of life. And the more entrenched we are in Maya, right, the more our ego is in control, the more dissatisfaction we'll experience. Mayor Baba once said, "The ego takes that which is unimportant as important, and that which is important as unimportant." Right? We can also perceive collectively. So that's kind of what culture is. It's a group of people who share a certain perception of how life is. So you think about, Western culture. We have a certain perception of how life is, which is different than Eastern culture, has a different perception of how life is, which is different than indigenous culture that has a different perception of how life is. When you think like alternative spirituality, which we might be, categorized as, we see life from a different perspective than Catholics or Orthodox Jews, right? It's a different perspective of how life is. So, how do we awaken from this? How do we awaken and see things clearly? One way is through awareness. And we can awaken awareness through a practice of mindfulness. So many of you are familiar. How many of you are familiar or have had a practice of mindfulness? Yeah, so it's the experience of, it's a pure experience of what is without our judgment and our interpretation on it. Just like bare attention, they call it. So just being with a sensation or sight or thoughts or feelings or the silence without judging it as bad or good or to be avoided, resisted, or, I want more of that. So just pure awareness. So I thought maybe we'd have just a little bitty experience of this together. An experience of mindfulness. Just kind of try it out for a minute. So I asked you to just kind of sit back and take a breath, close your eyes. Breathe. Let's become aware of sound, of what we're hearing with our ears. Just focus on the sound. You're hearing the fans or movement or someone coughing. Without judgment, without resisting, without wanting more of this or less of this. Just being present to that sound. Whatever it is you're hearing. Maybe you're hearing your own breath. Someone unwrapping a cough drop. No interpretation, just being present to what is. Keep breathing. A bird outside. Being present to what is. Okay, take a nice deep breath and begin to bring your awareness back. It's a peaceful thing, isn't it? We feel really peaceful just being present. And time just begins to kind of stand still. We just get this sense of expansiveness. Just being awake, you know? He says at the end of the chapter, complete acceptance of each inner experience dissolves craving or aversion. Complete acceptance of each inner experience dissolves craving or aversion. Can we accept each inner experience without resistance? Without wanting, oh, I want more of this. Don't let this go away. Make this permanent. Or, God, get that away from me. So I want you this week to really kind of pay attention to your thinking about that, whatever you're experiencing. And when you catch yourself, when you become aware, take a breath and just say to yourself, can I just be present to this? Can I just be present to this sensation in my body, hunger, and not like do anything about it. Just be present to it and breathe through it. It's a peaceful way to live, right? It's a peaceful way to live. All right, namaste. Hi, it's Reverend Victoria here. I'm at Unity Center of Peace with our house band, Bright Matter.
Hello.
Yeah, and if this video has inspired you or empowered you or opened your heart, opened your consciousness, or even just given you hope, we ask that you support what we're doing here by making a donation today, going to unitychapelhill.org or clicking the link below. And we thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.